There's a lot of people who will say to me that they believe you can be with someone for years and not truly know them. And I agree, that happens a lot, right? But I don't think that's just a symptom of you need X amount of time to really know someone. I think you need X amount of deep conversations to learn about that person. And a lot of people are not having those deeper conversations to really uncover the information necessary to determine, can you be with this person long term? Can this really work? What their intentions are, so on and so forth. Are they a viable partner? All right. Is this a man you can truly go on the journey of love and relationships with? And so I understand that for a lot of people, there are certain conversations that are very difficult to have. And unfortunately, I feel like whether we want to say society, church, whatever, kind of makes it harder to have some of these discussions. And I've been doing this for a long time. It's been like 17, 15, 17 years. And I can tell you there are some very specific, difficult, uncomfortable, important conversations that need to be had that many do not have. And so I want to lay that out for you because the quicker you can have these conversations, the better. And it's not something that you want to wait till you're married. But if you are married watching this, don't keep putting it off. But let's get to it, right? And this first one, please just work with me here. I know because some of y'all may feel like I'm coming out the wrong angle. Anyways, let me just say it. So the first discussion that needs to be had with the man that you want to be with is his sexual performance. Okay. Now, I understand there are many of you who um, believe in waiting till marriage. Great. Of course, we understand from a spiritual perspective that is correct. But I always say we acknowledge the fact that many do not wait that long. Many are going to cross the line. And whether you do or you don't, you still have to be prepared to have this conversation after you guys have crossed the line of being intimate. Okay? Now, here's why this conversation is so important, and I'll get into why it's so difficult. A lot a lot of relationships have fallen apart due to sexual disconnect. It doesn't get discussed in that way, right? People will look at or bring up other issues and make it about other things. But in a lot of those situations, it really boils down to there was a huge sexual disconnect. And we have to understand that sex is a very important part of relationship and again more specifically of a marriage, and people aren't going into long-term relationship or marriage saying to themselves, okay, well, if I'm not going to be able to have sex, I'm cool. Like, or if it's not good, I'll be fine. That's not how people are thinking. They're hoping and wishing that they will be able to find someone they can have a great experience with and they can sustain it over the long run. Now, it is also very important because once there is a breakdown in that area, other breakdowns start to follow. All right. Because if there's a sexual disconnect, there may be frustration that creeps into the relationship. There may be a level of resentment that creeps into the relationship. Now people are catching attitudes with each other for all kinds of different little reasons. People aren't wanting to be around their partner at the same level that they used to be around them, right? A lot of things can start to fall apart. Now, it's a difficult conversation to have because for a lot of women, um, and for some of you, you may personally feel like, well, it's not sex is not that important to you, right? Because I have to acknowledge that issue does exist for some, but you can't think that because it's not that important to you that it won't be that important to the man you're with. Now, if you have that conversation and he's like, no, it's no big deal to me, all right, so be it. But you have to understand for the majority of people, it is important. Whether you like it or not, whether you're like, why does it have to be that way? Because it is. It is that way, plain and simple. So, a lot of women they get intimate with a man, it's not that great. All right. But they really like the guy. He's a great guy, sweet. He has all these other great attributes. And so to that woman, it's like, well, I don't want to lose out on this guy because of subpar sexual experience. And if we're going to keep it real with each other, if that woman has had a life of various partners, there's a lot of women who will tell you that none of them were really good. Maybe one. Let's just give an example. Let's say a woman's been with 10 people, right? She might tell you only one person was actually good. Okay. So now, if the norm to her is it's not that great anyway with these guys, or most guys aren't that great, then there's no reason for her to think, well, then I will leave this guy because he's not that great. It's kind of par for the course, right? And with that said, she pushes forward. Maybe they get married, but because it's not that good to her, right? Whether it be his performance or just how she feels about sex in general, her desire or willingness to engage in it is going to start to waver. Many women may be able to uh, get themselves to in the mood to do it initially, but at some point it starts to fall off. And when it starts to fall off, that's when other things start to fall apart in the relationship. So now, going back to the point of discussing his sexual performance, it is also difficult because a lot of women will they've told me, and I'm sure you guys will agree, that a lot of men are not open to criticism, if we're being real, okay? And that if you make any mention of poor performance or anything of that nature, immediately the guy gets defensive. He may say something like, well, no one else has ever had a problem, so something must be wrong with you, and so the conversation gets shut down. And but again, she doesn't want to lose the guy, so she moves forward. But this is going to be a recipe for disaster, okay? It is important that as early as possible, we establish in a relationship the ability to constructively criticize each other, all right? Or let me use a different word. We are allowing ourselves to suggest ways that we can improve. It's the same thing, but I'm just giving it a different verbiage to help people feel better about it. So we want to discuss improvements to make, all right? And that has to be established early. And I would say establish that before the sex even happens. Like while you're in the dating phase, or if again, if you wait till marriage, before you guys ever get to that point, have this talk about, hey, listen, if we were to cross that line, are you someone that we can, tell each other what we like, what we prefer to be different? Let's establish that early so that then if it happens, there's a less chance of him being defensive or resistant to it. Okay? Because it was forewarned, so to speak. Also, you have to understand that again, this is not to make an excuse for infidelity. Please don't take this the wrong way. But what I will tell you is that in many cases of infidelity, if not most, sexual disconnect is another common denominator. Okay? So again, we have to understand that sex, and especially great sex, allows for a greater bond between two people. Therefore, the opposite creates a greater division between two people. So, all that to say, it is important to discuss it. You gotta establish it early. If you say to me, but Stephan, he's just not open to it. All right, then I will say to you, if you cannot have a partner that you can have these real conversations with, then maybe that's not the right partner to be with. We all have to be emotionally mature enough to handle these discussions. Now, I will say this: if you want him to be open to your constructive criticism, or to your suggestions of improvement, all right, you have to be open to his suggestions of improvement. And I would say to everybody, man and woman, humble yourselves, all right? Because the problem is everyone swears they are so good at intimacy, at sex. And maybe you are, right? Or maybe you fully capable. But every person's different, and the way it flows with a different person may not be the way that it flowed with the last person. So we have to come into every situation understanding that no matter how good you are, don't look at it as how good you are. Always look at it as how good you can be. All right. Meaning, all right, once I have a better understanding of my partner, I know I can provide them with what they need, rock their world, everyone's happy. But if we go into it thinking, oh, we're just so awesome, and now someone offers up this suggestion of improvement, a lot of egos get bruised, people get resistant to it, and then we don't get anywhere with the situation. All right. So have that discussion, make sure it is corrected as early as possible. All right. So now another difficult, uncomfortable conversation you need to have with a man you want to be with is discussing any triggers you are aware of. Okay. So just so we're clear, when we talk about triggers, essentially, all of us, I would argue, have been through some kind of hurtful experience, maybe traumatic experience, right? And when there isn't proper healing, and I'll get into more into that a little bit later, but when there hasn't been a full healing, sometimes those things linger in a way that little things can start to trigger us. Now, some people are not aware of their triggers, and I cannot hold it against you. Well, I understand that if you're not aware, you can't communicate it. However, what I would suggest to everyone is this is why even if you think you're okay emotionally and all these things, you should still go sit down with a coach, sit down with a therapist, basically do an emotional checkup just to see, is there anything you're overlooking? Is there anything that can be pulled out of you that needs to be properly addressed rather than waiting till you're in the moment of being with someone and then it comes out? Because one of the problems is it's one thing when your trigger gets revealed in a situation with, let's just say, some guy you were kind of just entertaining, but you weren't that really into, right? Well, no, okay, it's a beneficial experience, and you're not really hurt by the loss of the situation and the man because you weren't really intimate to begin with. But God forbid the trigger gets revealed with a man that you thought could be the one you're really into, and the trigger is strong enough, or your reaction to it is strong enough to where it can derail your situation. You do not want to put yourself in that position. So, yes, get the checkup, go see somebody to make sure what may or may not be going on within you. Now, let's just say you are aware of those triggers. It's important to express these things as early as possible to lessen the chance of conflict occurring in the relationship that a lot of times the other person doesn't even understand or is aware of. All right. Because I'm trying to think of an example, but right now I'm drawing a blank. But either way, if I don't know, let's just say even liking someone's picture on social media is a trigger for you because you experienced a man before who used to like women's pictures, and it turned out he was sliding into the DMs and cheating on you and all these things, right? So now the minute a man likes a picture on Instagram, you're like, nope, it's a wrap. I'm done. I'm not doing this, right? But for him, it may have generally been innocent. It may have been, when I say innocent, like he wasn't trying to take it anywhere. He wasn't pursuing anybody else, right? And having a simple discussion with him in advance saying, listen, I've been through this before. So for me, it's really uncomfortable to be with a man who feels like he wants to be on Instagram liking women's pictures. And now if we discuss it, he might be like, oh, okay, well, now that I know it's a problem for you and what you've been through, I'll be mindful of that. I won't engage in those things. Like for some situations, it'll be that simple. Others, it'll be a battle where he's going to say, well, that's ridiculous and all these different things. But if you guys can't come to a common ground, then okay, we know this can't work. But just having a discussion helps to eliminate the issue because now, if you don't have it, he does it, you get triggered. Even if you guys continue in the relationship, that trigger has now awakened this negative energy in you that's now lingering, that will now pour over into other situations. And you'll start looking at everything with a side eye because you're really still feeling some kind of way about that one liked picture on Instagram. Okay. So it has this ability to fester, linger, and contaminate everything else. And then before you know it, the whole situation blows up. So sit down, discuss these things. However, making someone aware of your triggers does not mean you don't still need to address your triggers. All right. If you know it's still there, then I need you to ask yourself, have I done enough work? Now, the argument I would make is that you have not. And let me be clear. You may have done a good amount of work. I applaud your efforts. I'm proud of you for getting the help that you need, right, to heal and all these things. However, if there is still a trigger, there is still remnants, there is still things there. All right. Maybe there's more you need to get off your chest, more you need to release. Maybe there's a couple things that you feel about that previous experience that you didn't fully tap into, right? There's more, or maybe it's attached to another traumatic, hurtful experience that wasn't properly addressed. And you have to get to that deeper root in order to free yourself from that other trigger that you're still holding, that you're aware of now. So either way, you've got to do the work, finish the healing process, but have discussions and if you are aware, then also give yourself a structure in how you react to your trigger. So it's like, okay, if you know this action bothers you, right? You have to remind yourself that if it happens, just don't fly up the handle. I always say, pray before you react. Take a deep breath, right? Maybe it's like, okay, if I see it happen, let me go take a step back, give myself an hour, and then I address it. Make sure you're handling it in a way that doesn't make matters worse. All right, so let's keep this going. And this next one might surprise y'all, but it's very important. So another uncomfortable or difficult conversation you need to have with a man you want to be with is how you really feel about working. Okay? So let me give this one quick story. And I met a man one time. Uh, he was running a store. He owned a store, and he told me his wife of over 20 years just out of nowhere was like, she wants to quit her job. Okay. And she was tired of work. And it seemed like the way that he was explaining it to me, that she was kind of going through this midlife crisis, and she was even considering divorce, right? But he didn't feel like they had anything wrong in their relationship. It wasn't perfect, but he didn't feel like there was anything bad going on. But either way, just all these things happening. So, he didn't want her to leave. He wanted to make her happy. So he, signed off on her leaving her job, and she had this dream of opening the store. And he actually put money together, opened the store for her, and it was like her dream come true. All right. And so he was talking to me, and he was expressing how, like, he was just so confused how out of nowhere she doesn't want to work anymore. And I had to explain to him. I said, well, listen, I don't know your wife. I haven't gotten to speak to her myself, but I can tell you that there's a lot of women who deep inside, they don't want to work. That's not their desire. They accept it as a necessity. Some may do it because they feel like they don't want the men that they're with to feel like they're just there to leech off of him, as some people will put it, right? And want to feel like they're contributing to the situation. But deep inside, they do not want to work, or they're not happy with where they are working. And unfortunately, not properly discussing that and addressing that can lead to these other issues. Like, I don't think a lot of people really understand how impactful it can be, to whether it be working in a toxic work environment or just somewhere you don't want to be, or working at all, and how that negative energy of just how you feel about having to get up and go to that job every day can easily now pour into your relationship. And you guys, again, are finding yourself at odds with each other more often than not, and for things that really aren't that big of a deal, but it's really just a symptom of you're not happy in your life. You're not happy with where you are. Now, I don't want y'all watching this and say, okay, I'm going to quit my job tomorrow. You better talk to God about that. All right. But I do think it's important to highlight the reality of not everyone's heart, and I want to focus on women, not every woman's heart isn't actually working. And there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. So I believe it is important for a woman to identify that within herself as quickly, early as possible, and to have honest discussions. Because what that discussion can look like now is, let's say you meet this man, you guys are dating, you guys are official, it's a serious relationship. And this is something that could turn into marriage, right? Or is heading in that direction. Well, honestly, I think the discussion should be had even before we get to that point. But making sure that at least happens before marriage. By you saying to that man, listen, honestly, I don't like working. I do it because I have to, right? But ideally, I would love to get to a place where I don't have to anymore. Now, you're gonna have some men who will be like, I'm not with that. That's not gonna work for me. But that's not every man. There are gonna be some men like, okay, if you don't want to work, what does that look like? Meaning, okay, do you just want to be at home raising kids, right? Does that mean I can then rely on you for cooking and cleaning? Like, I'll give you one example where there was a couple, they were married for 12 years. The woman did not want to work. She wanted to be home. But she said her husband will never let her just be home. And I was like, well, have you had a genuine conversation with him about it? She's like, listen, trust me, he wouldn't let that happen. So I ended up talking to the husband and I was like, yo, what do you think about this? And he said, listen, I would be okay with her being home. And I'm just telling you what he said. I would be okay with her being home if that means I'm gonna get cooked meals, the house gonna be clean, and I'm gonna get intimacy as often as I would like, because he ain't been getting it as much as he likes. He's like, if that's gonna all happen, cool. She doesn't have to work. But then he said, but I know that's not gonna happen. So if that's not gonna happen, go to work. Like, go make some money if you're not gonna provide me with these other benefits for letting you stay home. I'm giving that story to say, listen, it could simply be a discussion of, all right, what's the trade-off we're agreeing to here if he gives you that space to be home for those women who desire that. Now, some will always argue, well, Stephan, you can't do that in today's economy. You need two incomes. Listen, I would argue it's not that so much we need two incomes, is we need to reevaluate our lifestyles. All right. Many of us, I'm not saying everybody, but many, because of course, where you live is going to impact the need for higher income, regardless of lifestyle. But for others, lifestyle changes. Like, there are people, believe it or not, living good lives. I remember one guy I met, I think he was making 65 a year, 65,000 a year. And he was like, my life is great. Like, he got money to spend, he got his savings, because there's a lot of different factors that go into it than just how much the person's making. Also, he wasn't living in the city where he was at. He's living out in the outskirts where it was a lot less expensive, in an area that is less expensive in general. So, anyways, the point is, these factors will vary. And for some people, it's just being willing to make certain adjustments. But even if we say, but we desire this kind of a house and this kind of a lifestyle, okay, cool. Then if there's an understanding that the woman doesn't really want to have to work and doesn't enjoy working, then we can at least come up with maybe a 5-year or 10-year plan. We can say, okay, if the goal is to get you to a place where you can now stay home with the kids, and I'm just giving an example, maybe that means we make sure for the first 5 years of our marriage, let's hold off on having the kids to begin with, because that's an extra expense. In those 5 years, let's live below our means. Let's try to live under one income as much as we possibly can, while we save and invest the second income, to where now, maybe in 5 years, we have so much saved, invested, everything straight, that now if she wants to stay home and we can start having kids, we're good. And even if, okay, she just wants to be home for the kids in those initial years, right? And then once they're able to go to school, she kind of gets the itch and wants to get back to work. All right, cool, because everything was set up properly to handle that. Of course, life happens. Sometimes plans get thrown off course. But the point is, if we would just have these discussions, we can create a plan, and it makes it easier now for that woman who doesn't really want to work to say, okay, I just gotta put in 5 good years, or 7 good years, and I'll be retiring early, so to speak, retiring from working regular 9 to 5s or jobs out there, and I can just focus on home. So all that to say, you don't want to not have this discussion, because I've seen so many women who resentment starts to stir up in them, frustration. They get so tired to the point where, okay, they're so stressed and beat down from work that their ability to show up in that relationship in the way that their partner needs is severely diminished. And then that creates a different problem. And everything explodes when, if we would just have a conversation, we can avoid all those things. All right, got a couple more to go. And another difficult conversation, or uncomfortable conversation you need to have with a man you want to be with, is what are yours and his attraction deal breakers? All right. So here's what I'm talking about. This is another issue that I feel does not get properly discussed enough, yet plays such a huge factor in the quality and longevity of a relationship and marriage. All right. Because unfortunately, whether it be society, whether it be due to spiritual beliefs or ideologies, whatever, uh, people like to frame this in the, well, if you love someone, these things won't matter. Or, well, we all get older and we're all, looks fade. And I understand all of that. But that doesn't change the fact that how we look, how the level of attraction we have to each other in a relationship plays a huge role in how we treat each other, how we speak to each other, how we engage with each other, how intimate we are with each other, and so on. And how much easier, people won't like this one, but how much easier it is for us to resist temptation outside of our relationship. Now, again, that is not to make it okay or an excuse for it, but it does play a role. Okay? So I'll give a story real quick. I knew a woman who one time, uh, I forgot where I met her, but anyways, we were talking about this issue, and she said, you're so right. She was married to a man. They were married for 7 years, and when she married him, he's this big, muscular dude. He had locks, so he had hair such as mine, and she loved that. Like, that to her was beautiful. Like, okay, that she was very attracted to all that. Well, over the years, he put on some weight. He wasn't as in shape as he used to be. But she was still cool. Like, she was still like, you know what? Yeah, I would prefer the original version, but I'm cool. I'm cool. But then one day, he came home and his hair was all cut off. No warning, no heads up, nothing. Just surprised her with the hair cut off. And she was disgusted. she was so turned off. Okay? Now listen, there are some people who can make a drastic change like that. And they're lucky because it doesn't actually impair their attractiveness. Or they might actually become more attractive with this new, let's say, hairstyle. But let's keep it real, people. Sometimes people get a hairstyle, a haircut that isn't flattering for them. That doesn't it doesn't look good on them, okay? And yes, can make them less attractive to their partner. And a partner, unfortunately, you don't want to make the person feel bad. So you don't want to say, oh my gosh, I hate it. What's wrong with you? Why would you do that? So some will say it, some will flat out say it. But in many cases, oh, it looks nice, playing it off. But deep inside, you're not feeling it. And then what starts to happen? Because you're not as attracted, you're not as touchy-feely with them. You're not talking to them the same way. You may not even realize the changes in you, but they're occurring. All right. Or even the changes in them sometimes. Well, if you're receiving it, you're probably realizing the changes in them. But either way, these things affect people. And unfortunately, we have to understand that attraction and love are two separate things. Okay. You can love someone and not be attracted to them. You can be attracted to someone and not be in love with them. What we seek out or what we desire to have in a romantic long-term relationship is both love and attraction. But you remove one of those, and I'm telling you right now, things are going to head in the wrong direction. Now, I stress the word attraction and not looks because yes, people have different things that they like. They also have different levels of what they deem okay. So basically, listen, for one person, they can put on 30 pounds and their partner's like, oh, that don't bother me. I'm cool with those 30 pounds. That same person could put on 70 and that person might be like, okay, now that they crossed the line, that now it's too much. The next person might say, well, 70 is not a big deal, but they cross 100 and that next person's like, okay, now it's a problem. You see what I'm saying? Like everyone has their different lines. And I use weight, but it's in different ways. It's not even just physicality, how you're looking. It's also how you're carrying yourself. Maybe you used to dress a certain kind of way and carry yourself with a certain level of confidence, and that's not there anymore. And that's affecting your level of attractiveness. Like all these things can be a problem. So it is important that we stop trying to play this, oh, it's not a big deal to me, and boom. And yeah, it may not be as important to you, but everyone has a line. And that line should be discussed so that we understand, hey, listen, I love you and I'm here to ride this out with you. But I need you to understand that if you cross this line, it's making things more difficult. And the thing is, by discussing it in advance, we make things so much easier for us later if we get to that point. But when people don't discuss it, then it happens. And then you try to discuss it. Oh man, you know how many fights have happened because of that? How much resentment has happened because of that? Now people, oh, so you don't love me anymore? And it's like, no, that's not what I said. And it just goes haywire. And now the person who has the beef or that has the issue feels like they can't say anything. The other person may start feeling insecure, and now the division grows bigger. But if they established it early, that may not be a problem. And instead, it might be like, okay, yeah, we did discuss this. I hear you. Let's start making some necessary changes to get back on track. All right. And so there's actually a couple more I want to give, but I'm just going to give one more and I'll probably make a different extra video late in the future. But for this one, the other uncomfortable conversation or difficult conversation you need to have with men you want to be with is about finances. Okay. So I won't take too long on this, but I will say where I feel like people are not having deep enough conversations about finances. Too many people are getting caught up on the surface of, oh, my partner has a good job, they make good money, they seem to be handling money well. All right, we should be fine. No, that's not going to work. Some people may say, oh, well, my partner has XYZ credit score, we're good. No, because a credit score is only is a snapshot. You need to look at the actual report and see what's going on, okay? Because that will give you more of an idea and discuss some of these things. Now, again, that might be a bit much when we're just dating. But if we're trying to head towards marriage, we got to figure this all out, okay? But then let's go even deeper. It's also the relationship one has with money. How do they view money? How do they view savings, investment, retirement? What's their whole mentality with that? Um, you know, are they very stingy people? Because you can meet a man who makes a lot of money and he's cheap as hell. Okay, stingy as hell. You're not gonna be happy. You would be happier with the man who makes less but has disposable income and is very generous. So you got to get into the details and the nuances of it, and not just the surface level stuff. All right, and understand it is also about what kind of lifestyle they like to live. Because you could have a situation where, let's say, the woman likes to spend money and the man likes to be frugal. And if they don't get on the same page on how they find harmony with that, they're gonna butt heads a lot. Okay. And there's gonna be a lot of frustration. I've seen it in many marriages. And of course, vice versa, because it could be the other way around. He spends money a lot. She likes to be frugal. Either way, we gotta work all that out as early as possible, because I'm sure many of you have heard one of the biggest reasons for divorce is finances. And yet, for some reason, it's like we don't take a serious enough approach with that. So, ask the questions, dive deeper, gain that understanding, and make sure that you guys can establish proper structure for how finances will be handled as you move forward in that relationship. Thank you for watching this video. I pray it was helpful to you. Be sure to watch this one over here on He Values You a Lot when you see him do these 5 things. Men who, again, hold you in high regard, men who view you as someone very important to them and that they value, they want